Thank you guys for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you guys today. I just want to kind of give you guys an overview, kind of what is Salt Lake City? What's the mission like here? And really kind of how you guys can help. And so Dixie's going to kind of help really share her story. And I think Dixie does a great job of answering questions of, what is it like to grow up in Utah, especially being from an LDS background, and especially, when you convert to Christianity and what's it like in life. And so Dixie is an awesome lady, and you're going to be blessed by her story. And really want to share with the planners. We've got Paul Campbell, who's planning in Logan. We have Gavin Roberts, who's in Morgan. And we have Dustin Stopman, who's in West Jordan. But as Tim said, I'm from South Carolina. I went to the University of South Carolina. And while I was there as a student, I did a summer mission program. And, it was one of those times in life where you're not sure what God's doing in your life. And I remember I could sign up and go anywhere in the world. So I picked Burley, Idaho, because I could teach basketball. And it was either that in Peru or Moldova. And I chose Burley, Idaho. And I saw this video on PBS, and it was showing just the beauty of Idaho and how awesome Idaho was. And of course, they're just showing the national parks, and Dixie can relate to this. But they're not showing Burley, which is flat and potato farming country, and it's an interstate stopover. They didn't show any of that. But when I came out, I spent some time in Salt Lake and the rest in Burley, and I just fell in love with the West, and I just fell in love especially with Utah and Idaho. And my heart just broke here. Everywhere you go, and in South Carolina, everywhere you go, you've got churches everywhere. There's Baptist churches, Episcopalian churches, Presbyterian churches, Methodist churches, Assembly of God churches, non-denominational churches, and churches of all kinds and stripes of every kind. And then on the same corner, you may have the same type of church because they split, 5 years ago over the color of the carpet, or, they disagreed over some major thing. And then here in Salt Lake, there are steeples everywhere. Steeples dot the landscape. You can't help but see steeples. And you have big church-looking buildings, big white buildings on the side of the mountains that are lit up bright at night, and they're beautiful buildings, but none of them are churches. They're LDS temples lit up on the side, and then there's the steeples are all LDS wards and what they're called steakhouses. There's no meat is served there. It means it's just a kind of collection of wards, almost like an association of churches that meet together. And so you see them everywhere. And what I realized very quickly is you have some of the sweetest people on this planet who are the best neighbors, the nicest people in the world, and yet who believe in a false gospel and not a real Jesus and not the real truth. And many have grown up generation after generation after generation living in Utah, and they're trying their best so that God would one day be impressed enough with the way they live so that he would award them his eternal best for them, which is living in the celestial kingdom. And at the same time, you have all these people who now are coming to the internet and Google, and they're realizing that this isn't true, or this has some questions, and I want to explore this. And we are seeing fractures. I'm sure Dixie can share with you many examples of this, but fractures in the LDS church that are leading to a lot of people going to agnosticism and atheism, spiritualism, secularism. But I think it's also leading a door to the gospel, because at the same time, Salt Lake City is booming right now. We're getting industry after industry after industry that's moving into our area. So in the south part of Salt Lake, Utah County, we've got all the tech sector moving in. So all these companies in California are going, hey, it's too expensive for us to operate our business here. Let's move to Salt Lake City. We have a pool of labor that we can pull from. We've got cheaper houses. And us who live in Salt Lake City, it doesn't feel like we have cheap houses here. But if you're moving from California, it is. It's an incredibly good deal. And so you can get a lot more bang for your buck here. It's a right of work state. So all these companies see it's a great place to house their headquarters. Up north, we have the aerospace industry. Northrop Grumman just hired 2,200 jobs. And we have a housing shortage right now. And so housing prices went through the roof. People are moving in. And now you have people who are moving into places that traditionally have been very, very strong LDS places, but now have people from outside of Utah moving into those places. And now a lot of Mormon neighbors are now having Christian neighbors, or California neighbors, and South Carolina neighbors, and Texas neighbors that maybe they didn't have before. So I think God is doing a work through that. And now we're seeing churches start at a rate that we've never seen in the history of Salt Lake City. So I work with about 20 different church planners all across the valley. And we are seeing even just more churches and more churches be started in neighborhoods that have never had an evangelical church ever. So these guys here, all three of them, are in places where there's little to no gospel presence in those communities. And they represent, all three of them, incredibly tough, incredibly hard places to start churches. And you know, I planted a church in Ogden, Utah. You know, one of the big things church planting you hear nationally is it takes 3 years to start a church. And by that point, you should have a church going up and running and everything's good to go. In Salt Lake City, man, you're just getting started by year 3. I mean, you just feel like you're starting to get to know the people in your community and feel like you're plugged in and getting to build some trust with your neighbors. And by then, maybe you have some LDS friends who are saying, hey, I trust you enough to share with you what I'm dealing with right now. And I trust you enough to ask you the hard questions. And it takes a long, long time. So our job here, and my job, is to kind of help churches. Churches plant churches. And so we work with churches, work with our state convention partners and associations and the churches that make up those. Say, how can we work with you to help plant churches in some of the hardest places in America, the most unreached places in America? And so we work with those churches to kind of identify key areas, work with those planners, and we go through assessment. We assess them to see if we assess marriage and leadership ability and communication ability and emotional health, spiritual health. Are they ready to embrace upon this effort of planting a church? And then we go through a church planning training cohort, or we work with these planners and talk through kind of the specific areas related to church planning, and make sure they have a local coach on the ground who's working with them. And then we just try to care for them. We just try to bless them. You know, I know at the South Carolina Baptist and Melanie, you know, you guys are coming out with taking care of our church planner spouses. And that's huge, because a lot of times, you know, and a lot of our guys probably here on this call would say the same thing. Their spouses are the one who feel a lot of the brunt of planting a church. And often, you know, they're doing a lot of things. They're helping with the church and then helping take care of kids and all these things that are going on in their life. And sometimes they feel a lot of times like they're alone. And so we're trying to work really hard on how can we care for our planners? How can we care for our families even better? Just make sure that they don't feel like they're alone and doing this by themselves. And so the task is huge. It's enormous. And we need churches like you to help partner with us in seeing that mission accomplished. So, you know, one thing, my prayer, my heart and desire is that, you know, churches like yours and churches you represent and work with would connect with some of our churches, church plants on the ground, and find ways strategically to pray for them, to connect with them seriously around prayer and just the spiritual warfare a lot of these guys deal with on a day in and day out basis. Find ways to maybe send teams or send people for strategic initiatives or things that they're doing throughout the year. And then 3, financially, you know, what are some needs that these guys have and how can a church come around and partner with them and help maybe take care of some of those needs? So maybe you guys know this or don't know this, the North American Mission Board, we are a partner in the church planting journey. We don't fund any church plants 100%. We don't have the funds to do that. I wish we could, but we give some funds to help out and try to do some things where we can, but without the local church, you know, coming alongside, it wouldn't happen and get done. And so, and state conventions and associations, and those partnerships are strategic and crucial. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time just to hear kind of what's happening here in Salt Lake City. It's a great time to be in Salt Lake right now. God's doing some amazing things, and we're seeing, like I said, things happen here that we've never seen in the history of the state. And so what I think is really just awesome about being in Salt Lake and partnering in Salt Lake at this time is I think one day, maybe 20, 30 years from now, you know, we can look back and see, hopefully, prayerfully, you know, what God was doing to change our city, and know that around this time, churches like you and partners like you decided, hey, we're gonna partner and see what God may do if we take that risk of just seeing what God's gonna do with our church or our convention, just to help out in the work that's going on here. And I hope that one day we can have that conversation and look back and see all the really neat things that God has done over that time period. And so, if you want to participate with us, we welcome it. And I'm here to help however I can, and just connecting you in partnership, or if there's some unique things, I'm going to leave my information as well. So you can feel free to either email me or call me, and help you get connected with partnerships here. We'd be happy to do that. And Tim, I'll send out to just the contacts here that are on the part of this chat, so that you can have those and forward those on anybody who wants them.